Hi, John and Mary. It's so nice to see you today. I'm glad that we got to do this meeting and get to know each other a little bit better. How was your vacation? Oh, good, good. That is always a wonderful spot to go see. And how was the drive in? Was it okay? Traffic? Oh, good, good. I'm glad you had a good drive in. John, I want to extend a congratulations on retirement and selling the business. That is wonderful to hear. And Mary, congratulations to you as well, belated. I know you've been retired from teaching for about a year now, so now you and John get to embark on the retirement journey together, which is super exciting. Now, I do have an agenda today to cover. We'll take a look at your current financial plan and the status that it's in, and then we'll transition over into some implementations that we can take to help you get to a better spot and achieve your goals. But before we begin, is there anything on your mind today? Any questions? Anything on the forefront or concerns up front? No? Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. I do have to disclose as a fiduciary that you were referred to me by the insurance agent, and I was compensated for $4,333 for the referral. So I do have to disclose that upfront. Now I know your goals today. You had 4 at the forefront of your mind that you had emailed over to me earlier, which is reducing any estate and gift tax liability and ensuring that all estate planning documents are in order. You would secondly like to review the insurance contracts and discuss any implications of purchasing a long-term care policy. You would thirdly like to reduce income taxes if possible. And then fourth, the fourth concern that you had today that we are going to cover are based on your risk tolerance level, recommending a diversified portfolio that meets both of your investment needs and expectations. And we will certainly cover that today. Now, to start us off, I put together what's called an estate balance sheet. Now, this is going to be a record of all of your assets and liabilities, and it's going to have everything on there in your estate, from investment accounts to your residence to any outstanding liabilities. And in putting this together, it's going to push us into some of these other conversations today about your estate planning, about your tax planning, and what your investment plans look like moving forward. So as of December 31st, 2025, your current financial net worth is just under 14 million. So congratulations again to you both. That must be very calming in retirement to have that. And there's a lot to do, so we'll get right into it. I did put together a current ratio to calculate some of the strengths and weaknesses of the balance sheet. This is just looking at your current assets and then dividing by your current liabilities. Right now, you have a benchmark of about 29.45. And, what does this mean? You might be asking in easier language, please. Um, this means that you are well above the benchmark of liquidity and having cash, as you've got about 746,000 in cash currently, which is savings and CDs, over the current liabilities of around 25,000. So it does look like you are holding a little more in cash than you should. So that's something that we'll address today. Ideally for you, an emergency fund should cover around 3 to 6 months of your expenses, just in case as a cushion. Now, it could mean, a little bit different for you depending on certain circumstances. So right now, out of that 746,000, we want to look at about 150 to 200,000 in cash to leave that. So therefore, we should look at investing the rest. Now, I like to call this a cash management plan. When I say cash management and what I like to do with my clients is every year we're gonna meet, we're gonna have many touches together, and we're going to have many meetings. Um, and at least once a year, we'll redo this balance sheet to take a look at where everything's at. But we'll also, in that meeting, I'll ask, how does cash feel? Does it feel high right now? What should we do? So with cash management, what we'll do is firstly, we'll set aside 40,000 for that new car. I know you've got that new car purchase on your mind. We'll set aside around 7,600-ish dollars to pay off that credit card. We'll determine if there's any gifting for 529 plans, and we'll get to that here in a second. I've got all of that information for you for the grandkids. We'll want to then set aside 3 to 6 months of the cash for the emergency fund. And we'll also want to determine that there's no other near-term expenses. Then we'll cash management plan for the rest. So it's divvying out all of the cash and then setting aside some to keep in CDs and savings, and then taking the rest and implementing it into your investment plan. Now, you notice I mentioned the 529 gifting, and I just wanted to put that on the table for you both, for your grandchildren, Kevin, James, and Jill. That must be so exciting to get to see them more in retirement now and just spend time with family. It's always a great way to spend time. Now, for those 3 kids, 529 plans are great in many aspects, educationally and just being prepared and helping the next generations down the line be prepared. That way they can build their wealth too. So for Kevin, James, and Jill, you both can gift each of them $19,000 this year for 2025 without triggering a taxable gift event. So, in other words, each grandchild from the both of you can receive $38,000. That would be a total of 114,000. That's if you go up to the limit. Now, you can go over the limit, but that would trigger a gift tax return, and we don't want to do that for you right now, as we are in this different tax year to transition to. If you do decide to contribute and there's money left over in the plans, it is an okay thing because there's a couple of things we could do. We could re-designate the beneficiary to another family member, or they could take that leftover money and roll it over into a Roth IRA. It is subject to the annual limits of the 7,000. And then also, uh, it has a lifetime limit of 35,000. So there are future way down the road opportunities, but I just wanted to throw out the 529 as we're gonna go through this cash management plan to get you to your 150,000 to 200K savings, and then we're gonna divvy out the rest into all of these different vehicles. Now I want to move on to risk management for your insurance. So I did do a comprehensive review briefly initially. I looked at all of the policies and what you sent over, and I do have some recommendations. So we'll start with the primary home. Has about 400,000 on the face amount of coverage, but the building cost is 775,000. Now this is going to be a gap in coverage which we want to address with your agent or shop around. We can talk about that in a second. Typically, you want the primary and vacation in any residence to have a face value of 80% to make sure that you have adequate coverage. So right now, only having the primary residence policy of 400,000, you're not meeting that 80% when the building costs 775,000. So we'll want to increase this amount to around 608,000 at least, just to give you a peace of mind and give you the proper insurance coverage. Looking at the vacation home, you are well above the 80%. You are in a good stance. The coverage is around 460,000, so you are good there. So that's one of the things that we'll do on the homeowner's policy. Looking at the homeowner's policy still, the medical payments to others on it is a strength. It's around 50,000. Most of the agents that I work with sometimes can only quote up to 5,000 or 10,000 depending on the carrier that they have or the carriers that they have to work with when they're shopping around. So this 50,000 is really unbeatable right now, and it's another great strength for your policy. Now let's take a look at the auto coverage. One adjustment to cover would be the liability is only at 15,000. That's something that we'll wanna up. We'll wanna talk to the agent and see what they recommend in upping it. The rest of the coverage looked pretty satisfactory. All of the other limits looked great. Just that liability, we would want upped from the 15,000, especially if it's the property damage coverage with that, we want that upped. There's also ways to bundle with a boat and a umbrella policy. So I did notice you have a boat, so we'll want to get a policy in place for that. And then an umbrella policy is an overall arching policy to cover any liability if someone were to sue you or uh, get you with a large bill, we would want that in place. And typically, the umbrella policy is 1 times your net worth. So for that, we would want to quote a $10 million and a $15 million umbrella for you. And we'll take a look at that in further detail. Moving on to your health insurance, I did see that you have Medicare Part A and Part B and Part D. Now, Medicare Part A is free. There's $0 premium. Part B, the premium is 185 right now, but there are tiers to it. So if your adjusted gross income is in a higher bracket, obviously you know you're going to be paying a higher Part B premium. And then Part D is for your drugs. But I did want to ask, do you have a Medigap policy to go with that? No? Okay, we will wanna make sure that we get that coverage on there for you. There are 2 types of Medicare, so let me back up just to give you a run through here. There are 2 types of coverage when it comes to Medicare. There's original Medicare, where it's your Part D plan, and then you have your supplemental plan, and then there's the Medicare Advantage plans. And the main difference here is the Advantage plans are typically $0, very low premium plans. You will see a lot of co-pays, co-insurances. When you go to the doctors, you pay as you go. With that, Medigap supplemental coverage, on the other hand, is the Cadillac of all coverages. That's what I like to tell my clients. It's the Cadillac. It's the top tier coverage where you're going to pay a lot annually on an annual basis. And then when you go to the doctors, you're going to owe next to nothing. So I do recommend that for you to stick with the supplemental coverage, and we'll look at getting that for you. The other reason I encourage that is number one, you have enough net worth to afford the highest coverage. We don't want to have any gaps. And number two, if you were to start on the Advantage plan and save money, and then in open enrollment the following year, you want to move up in coverage, it's going to be a little difficult. Um, that would be something that you would go through with medical underwriting, and it's not always easy. It would trigger an event where the premium could go up more, or you could even be denied coverage. So we want you to stay at that top level, and then move across it if possible. When I say move across, I mean to all the letters. In the Medigap supplemental plan, there are multiple letters that we will go through. In plans G and N are known to be the highest levels of coverage. G is the highest level. I like to say N is the next best. If you're a little premium scared, you could start with N and then go to G, or go to G from N. That's something that we'll talk about down the line in the next meeting. But the reason Plan G is the best is the only stipulation it has is for the foreign travel out-of-pocket coverages. So say you go on vacation and you have a medical event that costs 100,000. Medicare will pay for 80,000 of it, and you only pay 20,000. You're only paying 20% for out of pocket in foreign countries. Everything else on that plan is pretty much included. This will just give you a comprehensive peace of mind, and that's something that we'll dive into in the next meeting. Now, I did take a look at your life insurance with the stage that you're at, and you may not need this anymore. We can explore the tax consequences, and I did put together some numbers here. If you were to gift the life insurances to your children, their total taxable event for both of you will be around $2.8 million. And you would have to file a Form 709 for the United States gift tax return, even if there's really no tax due. So we'll want to look into that. That is an option for you to think about. And then we did run the annuitized calculations. If you decide to take that annuity, John, to receive the $600 a month for life, the return on basis calculated for that is $100. So you would have a taxable amount monthly of $500. And finally, I know long-term care is a significant goal of yours, and I did go back through and analyze that. The comprehensive long-term care policy could allow each of you to share each other's policy benefits. So, for example, if you had a policy and it could be for 3 years, it could be paid out for 360,000, whichever comes first. There are differences in premiums and allowable medical deductions that you could itemize on your taxes, but we would have to take a look at your tax return a bit deeper to see that. Now, if you do not decide to gift the life insurance policies, there are a few potential ways to convert this into long-term care insurance. Firstly, you could surrender the policy and use that money to buy into long-term care. Or there is what's known as a 1035 exchange that could allow for you to transfer your current life insurance into a new hybrid policy that combines the benefits without triggering any sort of taxable event. And that would be in the life insurance policy contract. So we'd want to look at that a bit further to see if that is a viable option. Now, I'll take a pause here. I know I've said a lot so far. Is there any questions? No? Okay. We'll go into investment planning now. And I did take a look at your current situation. You are showing a total market value of around 4 million for the non-qualified assets and 1.5 million for the qualified assets. I did calculate what's called a Sharpe ratio to see how your portfolios are performing with the market. And it does look like the stock and mutual fund portfolios are averaging a bit lower than a bit higher, I mean, with the market and outperforming. But we'll take a look at the allocation today and what's best for you. I know for you both, there is a willingness to take more risk. So what I would recommend is putting you in a 70-30 ratio for asset allocation. We'll do 30% in fixed income and 70% in the market with some equities. Now, this is gonna include some of the cash from the bank, so that cash management plan earlier that I mentioned, it will include some of this. Mary, your 403B has the 2025 target date fund, and that is actually going against your risk level wishes right now. What happens with that 2025 target date fund is as it reaches the year, it will pull back into more fixed income and it'll adjust your allocation for you. Now, currently, we would like to see you a little bit more in the market, so we will take that and we will redeploy it into a more diversified portfolio with some small cap, mid cap, large cap, and some international equities. So we'll deploy that back into what we call ETFs to give you some tax optimization. And then that entire stock portfolio, it's actually operating on a loss right now. So your fair market value is 940,000 and the total cost basis is 960,000. We want to sell off and take that 20,000 loss. We can apply 3,000 of it to this year's tax return, and then the remaining 17,000 will get moved into the next tax years ahead. And this sets the investment plan in motion. We can re-diversify into those ETF categories and get that tax efficient strategy out of the way. And then for the 30% of the fixed income portfolio, when we set you in bonds, we'll take a look at municipal bonds as they are federal tax-free to kind of lighten your load as we transition the tax plan. Now, of course, we won't invest in any tobacco stocks per your wishes, and if there's any other portfolio restrictions desired by you, we can certainly look into that and put those on there as well. Now, by implementing this, we will look at adjusting. So next time I will show you a more in-depth plan of what each ETF and each buy sell would look like based on current market data. Now let's take a look at your retirement plan and congratulations again on retiring. You will have well enough to live off of that we have determined. Your total inflows this year were around 800,000 and total outflows were around 575,000. But I do want to stipulate that the bulk of that was in taxes. So we'll want to take a huge approach at that tax projection that we'll be talking about next. And the bulk of that, the number was around 300K in taxes for federal and state. So pretty much all your outflows are going to taxes. There's no discrepancy in overspending right now. Now, economically, we are projecting a 2.75% ratio on the inflation. However, if this increases and inflows decrease, we'll want to take a look at the plan. And I like to call this your long-term savings and spending plan. You got to accumulate all of this, and now it's time to spend, which is great. For this, we would recommend, John, going back to the investments, that you would roll over your 401k, assuming the fair market value is going to be a little over $1 million. And then we want to look at a guaranteed rate of return to get you to meet your goals. And then we'll also, Mary, want to look at rolling over your 403B. So before we do any of the investments and putting you into different investment vehicles. We want to complete those rollovers first for the 401k and 403b. And here's why. We're going to roll those into IRAs to maintain the tax deferred growth. I know you want to grow these tax free, but with these, you are subject to tax. It's going to go into a traditional or rollover IRA. And then from there, we can take a look at making some Roth conversions, and that will help you grow your Roth IRAs tax free and take it out, which is great. RMDs, we can do QCDs from your required minimum distribution. There is an age qualification. You have to be 70 and a half to complete this. So, Mary, you would not be able to do this yet, but I wanted to make sure it's at the forefront of your mind. John, you could start doing this, however, and then we could also get you opened Roth IRAs to contribute that 8,000 annually. Now, there is the income from the business sale that will be coming in, so we'll evaluate that and look at the plan for all of those other inflows. So, overall, your retirement plan looks great. We've got to shift some accounts to get you into the rolling over with the IRAs, invest, and then continue to monitor your spending habits, what the inflation rate is, and then what your returns are showing. Are there any questions? I know I've said a lot so far, and uh, anything jump out at you? No? Okay. So next we'll talk about tax planning, which I know we already talked a little bit previously with this. The initial review of your tax situation is going to come with some recommendations. I highly encourage next meeting, if you could, bring me the previous 2 or 3 years of your tax return just to take a look at and see if there's any other strategies that we're not optimizing. I am gonna recommend that we work with a CPA, and we'll get you an accountant, someone to prepare the return, 'cause I cannot prepare a return. And then we'll work together, and if you have one, great. If you don't, I can certainly look around for you. So the first tax strategy was with the investments, with the investment income. We know that some of your assets are going to trigger taxable events with interest, dividends, capital gains, and the non-qualified assets. These are now going to be in those exchange trade funds, the ETF, and the mutual fund portfolio. And with the goal of the 30/70, the ETFs are going to be tax efficient, more tax efficient than what you're going to see with the individual stocks. Now, the other side of the portfolio with the municipal bonds, those 30% are federal tax free, so that's going to give you a little bit of a break, and we'll calculate out what that would be. You also had questions on the down payment from the installment loan, and that down payment of 800,000 that you're receiving from selling the business, this is going to affect your 2025 tax year situation. Of the 800,000, 180 won't be taxed. Therefore, 620,000 will be recognized as the long-term capital gain, and the tax treatment will be treated for the first installment payment will be treated as a $23,000 gain. So we'll want to take a look at a tax projection, take your prior year return, input any roll over into this year, input any assumptions that might look a little different, and then we can calculate in the next meeting what any quarterly payments might look like. Because it is, around the end of the year, December 31st, we want to make sure that we could get you into a Q4 payment if needed. I also want to mention the inverted Jenny stamp is a collectible, and that's so great that you have that, John. It's a very unique tool, a diversified asset, certainly. If you were to sell this, though, they are subject to a higher capital gains rate of 28%, and the net investment income tax is 3.8%. So if you did decide to sell this, it would be a gain of well over 30%, so it is recommended to hold on to this for now. We're going to I would hold it for life, John, and then upon you passing away, the beneficiary that will receive it is going to receive a step up in basis, which is good to see. Now, moving on to estate planning. It is great to see that you already have burial and funeral expenses and wishes in place. The 250,000 in the estate administrative expense and 50,000 in burial expenses. That is great to see that you have that already planned out. The estate is subject to excessive probate fees if some of the assets aren't jointly owned. So we'll talk about that today, how to avoid the probate fees. And then we'll want to determine if there are any other documents in place. So firstly, you have a will, which is great to see, and it would be great to review that together and make sure that everything down to your executor or executrix is what you would like, that the beneficiaries are up to date, any bequests, and then we'll determine the need for a trust. We'll determine that with an attorney. Another document that I recommend you get in place with your estate plan is the power of attorney. This is someone who is going to make decisions on your behalf regarding your finances when you are not able to. They're able to take over some control. Now, this you don't have to be incapacitated for this. It could be something as John, you and Mary are in another country, you take a vacation to Italy, and you need some money moved over and you're unable to access your bank account overseas. Well, that power of attorney can go get that signed and then they can move the money for you. So we want to make sure that that's in place. The other document that we'll want to take a look at is your healthcare proxy. And these are medical directives that make decisions on your behalf when you are unable to do so. So I want to let you know this right now as we're going to dive in a little deeper and do some of the work next meeting, and we're going to get with an attorney to draft these. But I want you to go home and think about who you would label as your agents and talk it over with your family. I highly recommend you be very open with this, and you let the person know that you're going to make them an agent. Now, for the home and autos, it is recommended that any of the titles that are in just your name, John, that we transfer those from sole ownership to joint tenancy by entirety. This will avoid probate and it will be for the vacation home, the automobiles, the boat, and the Jenny stamp. Make sure all investment accounts have beneficiaries labeled on them. This could be going to the bank if there's any bank accounts that aren't jointly opened and owned. You'll want to get a form and put a beneficiary on that. I will work closely to make sure your investment accounts have beneficiaries on those. And any of the non-qualifieds that maybe aren't jointly owned, we could put a transfer on death on just to make sure it doesn't go through probate. And then we'll want to next steps logistically get together, go through all of the current documents you have, talk through the new ones. That way I can send over a Cliff Notes summary to the attorney, and then we can get you scheduled with the attorney to draft, go through, and then they can explain it at a more higher level than me. But I want to make sure that I offer my guidance, I'm happy to meet you at the attorney's office if you feel a little more comfortable, just to be there with you, happy to do that as well. So with this, we've covered many items today, and there have been many strengths and weaknesses that we've found when working through this. And we'll go through the action plan and take a look at all of the items that need attention and help put you at ease with your future financial goals. So, firstly, it is important to consult with your estate planning attorney. We want to get that done logistically next meeting, starting with the wills in place, reviewing your executor and your executrix, and all beneficiary designations and bequests to be sure all information supports your wishes. The attorney will also help with the retitling of homes. They will have a better stance on what to do for that. And then, secondly, we'll take a look at the insurance. We'll get those gaps in coverage up to date with the insurance agent. With your home primary residence, we want that coverage up to the 80%. We want to work with your life insurance. If it's the same agent, we want to ask some questions about converting that policy into the long-term care if that is an option, and then we'll go from there. We'll also want to add the umbrella policy. We'll want to do the boat policy, and then lastly, take a look at your Medicare and make sure that you've got that supplemental coverage. So that's it for our action items with the insurance. Third, we will go through the investments and cash management plan. We're going to divvy out that cash, that 40,000 for that car. We're going to pay off the credit card, open any 529s, do any gifting there that's needed. And then we'll keep that 3 to 6 months of savings. We'll put the rest in investment vehicles based on your allocation. We could put more in CDs. We could do more in the non-qualified portfolios. So we'll probably move some cash there since we want to maintain that 30-70 asset allocation that was presented. After the cash management, we're going to want to roll the 401k and 403b into the IRAs and start optimizing any Roth conversion strategies with that. And then fourth, the tax analysis that has been complete. We'll continue to minimize those with the tax plan, and we're going to plan for the gain on the installment agreement. So there's a lot to do there, and I'm happy to get started right away. I might send a follow-up email from this meeting to get any more information that I might be missing, and then we have our agenda for next time. So are there any questions today? I hope this was helpful. No? Okay. Well, it was great meeting with you today. I look forward to working with you and look forward to helping you accomplish those financial goals that you have. And uh, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Yep. You too. Take care. Bye.